like I said, I'm so fascinated to talking to people about screen time because I've talked to some people and they're
Yeah,
like, it's not such a big thing to worry about. But
right.
then recently I read the Johann Hari's Stolen Focus book, and I'm like, oh my God, like the social media is like killing our brains and like
Yeah,
TikTok, what is it doing to our attention? And so it's like such a tricky question. I mean, I think for
yes.
so many ages. So maybe we could kind of talk about, I was wondering if maybe we could start by talking about like how does screen time affect kids
Mhm.
at those different ages? Because
Yeah.
it is different, right? As you grow up and you're more immersed in this culture.
Yeah, just think of us, we're mamas that want to be there for our kids. And in those first 5 years of life, imagine what's happening. It's like your child is learning to talk, your child is learning to walk, your child is learning to play and engage with others. Your child is learning joy by looking at you, showing joy to your child. But you put a device there, let's say, and then all of a sudden this 2 year old who would normally be babbling, talking, pointing at things, all of a sudden they're quiet, right? Like they're not in your hair, but they're
Which is
looking
like
down at a
ostensibly like,
screen, right? Yes,
yeah,
like
it's kind of like what you
so
want, part of
so
what you
so
want.
truly those first few years are, I believe, the most crucial. And those are the ones where I think that mama bear's got to come out to say, even I've got older kids and they're on their devices, that, hey, oh, no, 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 we've got to protect, our 1 year old or 2 year old or 3 year old or 4 year old. Because the thing is, they're having habits for the rest of their life and their brain is developing at an astonishing rate. And I like to think of it, when I moved into our house, it was just, dirt, we were new development, and you kind of buy in faith thinking, I hope they build something around here. But of course, in time, everything gets built out, and that's your child's brain, that it is just dirt. And as it's developing, it's having a road to reading, a road to music, a road to eye contact, a road to listening. All those things are being built. But when we introduce a device in too much, too early, too stimulating, all those things, those roads aren't built. And you wonder, like, oh my goodness, you're a 25-year-old, but you don't know how to be empathetic towards another person or how to just sit down and listen to someone for 10 minutes. That's something that never got built in your life. So I believe the younger your children are, the more protective you should be about that screen time. But I also believe from until age 10, like, think of it, your kids, they want to be with you. They think your opinion is like amazing. So whatever you say, they're like, yes, that's what my mom says. And so
And that doesn't
that's
last, people.
it, right? That is a window. So if we like waste that window because we are all on our devices. So that's my big thing, is asking that question: is technology bringing your family closer together, or is it tearing it further apart? What does it do to the relationship? And from 0 to 10, that relationship is really being formed. And it's a very sweet relationship where your kids really want to be with you. They love you. They care about what you say. And so in the book Screen Kids with Dr. Gary Chapman, we're really trying to help you discover, what's your why behind. Because if you do delay devices, as my family did, you are going against the grain. Like, you're the mama, you're the weird mama that doesn't have the phone in their kid's hand, and so you have to understand, like, why is that important enough? And that's what we go into.
I agree with you completely. I mean, the American Academy of Pediatrics says no screen time before the age of 2. I mean, I can think of that. I think of like, actually, I think of both screen time and sugar in similar ways,
Right.
like there
Yes.
are these things that like we have a natural proclivity to, right? Because our brains
Right.
are wired to kind of like look for these rapid movements and
Like, you never had to
wired to
tell your
look
kid, like,
for
this milkshake is amazing. Like, you never
yeah,
really
yeah,
had to tell
yeah,
your
yeah,
kid
yeah. Like
that.
we're wired to look for something sweet. But now in our world today, we have so much abundance of this like distraction and sweetness that it's harmful, right? And so I
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you do go against the grain. I remember like saying to the people at the bank, like, can you not have the lollipops out and offer them to my like
Right.
1 year old, please? And it's similar, I think, with the screens. Like
Mm.
it is kind of going
And
against the
it's
grain.
it's funny also that you bring up candy, because that's one way. Because sometimes we'll think like, oh, all technology is bad or all technology is good. And that's what's tricky about it. It's a mixed bag. And so I love to think about it as digital vegetables and digital candy, that they are both available. And the digital vegetables, when kids were online in school, no one was afraid, like, oh my goodness, my child's going to get addicted to Google Classroom. Like they're going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing calculus and Teams. Like nobody thought that, because they knew this is not an addictive medium. So they're the veggies, that's the stuff we're trying to make our kids do. Like, will you please learn a different language? Will you please like learn this instrument online? Will you please listen to this lecture? Will you please, etc. That's a vegetable, and that is good for a child, and they never get in trouble for that. But the candy, of course, is YouTube and TikTok and social media and video games, and it's okay in small doses, but because it is so addictive, just like when you introduce sugar for the first time and it's so hard to get off of it, it's the same thing. And so I think for our kids and for ourselves, it's helpful if we can say, hey, is that a digital vegetable or is that digital candy? And the kids like candy. Okay, well, let's do a half an hour of that today. But just start having that conversation so that they understand, because sometimes we moms will be like, well, we don't want to seem hypocritical because we're on our phones or we're on our laptop working, and we don't want to be hypocritical and tell our kids. So we just but if we talk in this way, like, mommy's doing a digital vegetable, I'm like answering my work emails. And then it's funny because it legit makes you do that, because now you've just told your kid you're doing this digital vegetable. And yes, does the line get blurred? Of course, but just calling it back to that. Because if I strap M&Ms to my body and I just tell myself, I'm just going to eat 10, right? There's no way I'm ever going to succeed. And if we give our child a phone, an iPad, and they have access to it anytime they want, there's no way on their own that they're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm cool. 20 minutes. I'm good, mom. Like, it's not going to happen.
I know we have to have boundaries and stop it. So, okay. So 0 to 2, at least, like, let's try to like completely just kind of like, as little as possible. None if you're able to, and and I understand that, we're all gonna have moments where we're human and etc. But so then we want to limit their exposure to digital candy. So that means having limits and holding those limits. What do you think are some healthy ways to have screen time in kids' life, like say from like, 3 to, like in preschool, and then maybe in elementary school or something like that?
Yeah. So co-viewing, the American Academy of Pediatrics always talks about co-viewing, that if you view with a parent or with an adult, exactly. I know exactly that's what you're going to say. So that's how it is valuable, that you're both watching and you say, oh, isn't that funny how he did that? And then you can laugh. Oh, remember the little red rooster, whatever. So
I actually did like My Little Pony. Like I would put on My Little Pony for my girls when they were little. And I'd be like, oh good, I'm gonna use this half an hour to do something. And then I'd just sit with them for a few minutes and I'd get totally sucked into the whole
hysterical. You're like, I must find out what happens.
What ours
was Thomas the Train with our boy. But so let's be real. So that's the best way, right? Is to have an adult, a caring adult in this child's life, that's watching and talking with them about this show. The real way is that, oh, good, we're safe for half an hour. And now we're going to go do stuff because we know exactly where our child's going to be. And here, I think the old technology is better, is that you get that old, I still have it, a DVD player, so you get that DVD player and exactly what's going to be in it, because you never know what button your child is going to push while you are away doing whatever, or whatever's just going to pop on. So exactly what's being played, and more magically it ends. Because the problem is, once your child understands oh, look what this remote control does, now you're fighting this oh, can I watch more? Something queued up next. I have to find out what happens to my pony, whatever. And so it's really a lovely thing where it ends. It stops. And that's how it used to be. And that's why I think the technology of yesteryear, it's in terms of parenting. And I think even in your adult life, the old stuff was better because it had a stopping point. And this technology they made it this way. They did it on purpose. They could have done it so that it really did stop, but they knew our psychology, oh, we'll keep watching. We'll keep their eyes if we cue them up something else. So I think it is important to limit it. So let's say it's a half an hour a day. And then it's a DVD player because it has an end, or something where you have a system. Don't make it so hard for yourself that, you have all these decisions to make. Just make a system like, okay, from this time to this time, that's your half an hour. And this is the program that you watch. And
Yeah.
I know some of you are rolling your eyes and you're like, oh, please, what world do you live on? But you are the adult and you have this kind of power to establish what is normal in your child's life. You do. You can step back and think like, what shows have the values that I want my child to really latch onto? In the book Screen Kids, we talk about like ABCs, like A, what kind of attitude does my child have after this show is over?
Mm.
B, what kind of behavior does this show really applaud and make my child do? And C, character, what kind of character is really played out that's what I want my child to be. And so I think as we use that and we see like, oh, our kid should be a more enjoyable child after the screen time. And I know for a lot of us, it's like, oh no, our child is not a more enjoyable child after screen time. And I think as parents, we've got to reclaim that. Like, that's not the kid's fault. That's on us. Like, we're the ones allowing them to watch, whether they're 5 or they're 15.
I That's actually something that I did. I remember, well, we had a laptop that
Yeah.
DVD player. I'm not sure we have one anymore,
Right.
but we had one, and I would get DVDs of Mr. Rogers
Yeah.
and Sesame Street from the library,
Awesome.
and they stopped. But it's hard for me to imagine that people even have that anymore. But I wonder if there's got to be some kind
You know
of
how we
thing where
love
you
things
can.
retro? We love, I mean, if you got a Walkman, it'd be so amazing and so
I
expensive
still
to buy.
have
So,
my
yes, so good
Walkman
for you that you kept
and
that.
my mixtapes.
Thank you, Star Lord. So I think it's okay to think like, hey, let's get that. Let's go to the thrift store and get that retro DVD player and call it something really cool and put a DVD in there. Seriously.
Okay, cool. Well, so you recommend for preschool, let's maybe do half an hour a day. Do you, one thing that I did when my kids were little that I am so glad I did when they were young now that they are older, and they're 11, 14 now, is that started doing a screen-free Sunday every
Yeah.
Sunday, just to have like a day of the week
Like a
for
break.
all of us where we
Yeah.
took a break. And I don't answer any emails, like sometimes,
Yeah.
we get the map or whatever, um, but that was a good habit that I think
Yes.
I mean, I would offer as a way to kind of
Yeah.
create some healthy habits when they're young. And now
I
what about our own
wholeheartedly
behavior,
agree.
right?
Yeah,
Oh,
our own behavior, and you do that digital Sabbath kind of thing, which I also agree with. And you'll find out that it's mom and dad, right, who either have the hardest time. And it's also a good test that you say, hey, we're gonna, not have screen time on Sunday, and whoever freaks out the most, then like, oh, you're the one. You're the one who has the biggest problem. So it is a helpful thing, but you're right. It is what we are modeling. And I think it's a good question to ask ourselves, if my child grew up to use screens just like I do, would they be really healthy and happy? Would their relationships really thrive
that's true.
with that? And one thing that's so great about being a parent is that it makes you become a better person. Because
Yeah.
if it's just you, you're like, oh, whatever. But it's like people are looking up to you. You've got some responsibilities. And so I think that instead of bemoaning that, like, oh, I have to do this because my child, like celebrate that. Like, this little kid is going to make me a better human being that is more loving towards other people, more mindful towards the people around me, more relational. And so I think that what we model, and that might start with an apology. It really might. And you have to be kind of ready to do it. And it's something that Dr. Chapman and we outline how you can apologize to your kid. But just to give the short of it, it would be something like, I'm so sorry. I've realized that mommy's looking at the phone a lot when you ask me to play. And I'm really sorry about that. And the sorry can't end there, because the kid will be like, okay. And kids are so forgiving. But if tomorrow and the next day and the next day you look exactly the same, it's kind of like, okay, why'd you bother apologizing? And so it has to come with I'm really sorry that I'm going to do that. Here's how I'm going to make it up to you. After dinner, we're going to read a book together for 10 minutes. And that's what we're going to do. That's going to be our new thing. So just kind of think through, and if you dare to do it, ask your spouse, ask your friend, ask your mother, ask your children, hey, am I on my phone too much? Do you ever feel like you're having to compete with technology to talk to me or to keep my attention, and really be open to what they say?
That's a good, brave question to ask. I wanted there's some of my friends who I want to tell them, but I'm not sure, like
Right. And that is hard because see, when you solicit the advice, then it's welcome and it's this really great thing.
yeah,
But when
yeah,
it's unsolicited
no,
advice, right, to another adult, then it feels oh, you understand. It feels
yeah,
different.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're judging me. Okay, so preschool, we're gonna be looking at our own behavior,
yeah.
maybe looking for some old school technologies, bringing it back. And it's right.
Yes.
They were designed that way. They were designed to
Yes.
addict your child. It's the product of the business model, which is
Yeah.
your attention or your child's
Yeah.
attention for dollars. So the more
And for moms to get kind of upset about that, to think like, wait a minute, you want to hook my 4-year-old so that my 4-year-old is playing your game for the rest of their lives? So let there be a little bit of indignation, like, no, you're not going to get them at 4.
Yeah, and there's some things you can do. I mean, I don't know all the technology things you can do, but my husband has now blocked YouTube
Yeah.
on our from our server on like
Yeah.
Sundays and some other I don't forget what it was, but
Sure.
like at least YouTube is completely blocked just to like
Yes.
just to like have
Yeah.
and it's not fair, right? Because our kids with their undeveloped brains are like going against the like smartest developers in the country who have all this
Exactly.
psychological training to like make us just be watch more and more and more and more.
That's
So
right.
it's not our fault necessarily, but we can take steps to work against it. Okay, so elementary school, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of easing them into elementary school is
Mhm.
when a lot of parents get their kid a phone,
Yeah.
right? Like this is a lot of times when they're like, okay, my child's going to school, they're away from me all day. I need to kind of be in touch with them just in case. That's what I think that people think. And what do you see? What do you recommend for
Yeah.
elementary school ages?
So I recommend that you talk to people who have done this because you think to yourself, oh, this is going to be so great. We'll be able to keep in touch. And we do it for quote unquote safety. And then you realize, oh my goodness, when I give that device, I think of it as like BC and AD before the cell phone and after the device. There is a marked change in your child. And it's like the things they used to like, the things they used to play. I remember my cousin telling me that they, in the cul-de-sac, the girls would always play together, right? They bring their bikes out, they bring their scooters out, they always play together. But when one girl in the neighborhood got a phone, then for a little bit she came out, but then now she didn't come out anymore. And then they'd knock on the door and she'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just going to hang out here at home. And what happened was that door to childhood, imaginative play, all the innocent stuff of childhood that a fourth, fifth, sixth grader would do, right?
The
That
important
starts to
work.
close. Yes,
Yeah.
that closes. And then all of a sudden they're forced into an adult world way too soon. So I would just, if I can't say it emphatically enough, if your child is asking you in elementary school for a phone and saying everyone else has it, you need to delay, delay, delay. Wait one more year, then wait another year, then wait another year. And if it's like you need to get in touch with them, then just get that Gab wireless phone that all it does is like text. So that way, yes, mom can call you, dad can call you. We can figure out this ride situation. That's fine. But don't give your elementary school child a smartphone. Don't allow your elementary school child on social media, because once you do, that sixth grader that was skipping and happy and laughing, now they're going to school and they're like upset because so and so posted such and so didn't like their photo. And so, because now we're in a comparison game and everything is about it's lost. Instead of like, oh, I made a friend at recess, they're thinking about like, oh, how can I get more followers? And it's too much too soon. And so do yourself a favor, do your children a favor. It's not the right time.
There was actually a pledge around when my oldest
Yeah.
daughter that was like wait till the 8th
Yeah. Wait for
kind of
eighth.
pledge
Mm-hmm.
for a smartphone, and I thought that was a smart idea.
And you know what? And so I've kind of talked about like kind of the emotional part, but just think of it this is a very expensive item. So you're about to
Oh,
give your
yeah.
child a very expensive item. So they should exhibit like the responsibility to not lose it, to take care of it. So even just thinking like, okay, does my child do their chores? Does my child do their homework without asking? Is my child mature? Does my child pack their own lunch? Do they do their own laundry? And if you're saying no to these things, but they promise, if you get me a phone, I promise I'll do, that's not going to happen. And so your child has to prove trustworthy. And every child is different. You might have a 14-year-old who handles social media really well, and a 16-year-old where it would just be their undoing. So it doesn't have to be age based. A lot of times as parents, we think, oh, it's got to be fair. At 13, everyone gets this. No, you look at your individual child, and you even do it on a test basis that, hey, we're going to just try this for 1 month. And if it works well, then we'll continue by a month basis. But if it doesn't work well, we love you so much that there's no way we want you to go to the dark side. You know what I'm saying? Like it's rooted in love. So let them know when you get a phone, this isn't like carte blanche. Like, okay, you got a phone now for the rest of your life. Like if we see in a month that, wow, this is like a downward spiral for you, we're going to take it, and we're going to do something else.
It's funny, Arlene, because you hit the nail on the head for me, because my 11-year-old
Yeah.
is like looking forward to, because her sister got a phone at 13 and she thinks that she'll get a phone at
Yes.
13. And right
Yeah.
now my husband are a little like, I don't know, she's
Yeah.
exhibiting more like kind of just unable to get off the iPad kind of
Right.
behaviors, and not able to have that restraint. I mean, it's not her fault. It's like,
Yep.
but and her sister, it was a different thing. Like her sister actually
Yeah.
tried out, it was amazing. Like she actually tried out TikTok at the beginning of the
Yeah.
pandemic, and had TikTok on her phone for like 6 months or something. And she took it
Yeah.
off on her own
On her
because she
own.
felt like it was like messing with her brain. I
Wow.
was like, wow,
Good for you, right? To your
that's
daughter. It's like, good
amazing that you
job.
did that,
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't think that's probably not normal. I'm
Yeah.
sure
So
it's
that's so right. And then
not.
that shows and one thing in Screen Kids that we help parents understand is like, think of it as casual, at risk, or addicted. So like a casual user, someone who plays a video game one weekend with their dad and then doesn't talk about it for 2 weeks. And then they pick it up again and they play, and they might play for 20 minutes, walk away. It's no big deal. Like a girl on social media, once in a while, she'll check. Once a week, she checks in. She doesn't need to look at it every minute. It's fine, casual. Then your at-risk person is like, okay, you're supposed to play games on the weekends, but every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're asking, can I play a game? Can I play a game? Can I play, okay, you're kind of at risk. You kind of really like this stuff. And then of course you're addicted is, oh, you can't go 1 or 2 days without social media, without the game. And then, like, wait a minute, this is getting a little bit too much sway. If you do the camping trip over the summer for 3 days without Wi-Fi and people are in tears, then, like this, there's something wrong here. Like we're out of whack.
Well, I guess ideally, right, as parents, we don't want to, it's like the proverbial pot of boiling water, right? The frog in the
Yeah.
pot. Like we want to have those limits be healthy enough so that our kids, we don't have to do the painful pulling back once we've already
Yeah.
opened the gates, right? Like we
Yeah.
want to just open the gate kind of slowly enough so that
Yeah.
they learn about it, learn about themselves, and they're not totally they're not totally out of touch with their
Yeah.
friends. Um,
And
but
I can
that's
tell
hard.
you, I have a 17-year-old and he's driving. And when you drive, you don't just say like, oh, here's the keys, have a good time. Like you're training. And that's the same way with technology. And, we talked about their moms. I know you're listening and we're all over the place with their technology. So I am I hope you feel like I'm a nice person, but I'm a totally weird, strict mom. We have a 17-year-old, so a senior in high school. We have a sophomore in high school, and we have a seventh grader. None of them have phones. We're not afraid of technology. They edit things, they have editing software. We've got computers at home. Of course, they have the tablets that come from school. So it's not like they don't have technology. They have all this stuff, but they do not have a personal phone. They don't play video games. They're not on social. And they knew, like, all growing up, like, oh, my mom's like this researcher that researched all these bad things that happened to their brain. So they knew, like, growing up, this is our thing. But here's the deal. They they do it, let's say at the beginning, because that's the way we raise them. Like those are the rules. Like you're little and you got to listen to our rules. But now that they're teenagers, it's super interesting because they've embraced a lot of the things that we've taught, just like your daughter with TikTok and taking it off herself. And so we did a little documentary with them. So I could, while they were still in high school, you could hear from their own mouth, like, you know what, my daughter, for instance, saying, people will be like, good for you that you don't have a phone. And she'd be like, what? Like she was so surprised. Like one girl said, good for you because you're not addicted like we are. And so it's been interesting for them to see that you can, obviously you can have friends, you can have all these things, and you don't have to be in these things. As my son said, there are people who won't be your friends because you don't play a certain video game or you're not on social media, like you don't have anything in common and you're not going to be their friend. But he said, I found there's like tons of people who, yes, they play video games. Yes, they're on social media, but they're happy to be your friend because you have other commonalities. And he's like, those are the people I find are the people you want to be friends with. That's a quality of friend that you want. So I know a lot for moms, we're afraid that if we raise our kids different, oh my goodness, our kid's going to be the one alone in the cafeteria, sitting alone and like not having any friends, and at graduation, no friends. And it's not that way. Like they can have such a good quality, like the quality of their friendships is higher because it's not just around a gaming console. It's not just around social media.
Well, this is interesting, Arlene. Now I have so many questions.
Yes.
So wait, so your 17-year-old doesn't have a phone?
Correct.
Okay. So
and we live in San Diego, okay? And they go to public school. So it's not like you're like under a rock in the woods. I'm serious. Like,
you're not saying? The Captain Fantastic family.
And my son is the captain of the debate team. My daughter's managing the boys tennis team and is on the tennis team. Like they're not hermits. They have friends. They're very active, but they don't have phones.
What did you do during the pandemic when everybody was like all doing remote schooling? And do you have a landline? Like,
no, so
do they have the cord pulled into the closet the way I did?
So they use my phone the way the people of the last generation would have used a home phone, right? So they use my phone to talk to their friends. And honestly, so there is a family iPad. So that's what my daughter, Lucy, the 7th grader, she tended to talk to her friends on that. And then we have Chromebooks, we have iMacs. So everyone has a device. So they would talk to their friends on their devices. They text their friends using my phone. My son, Ethan, he has a Google Voice number, which allows him to do all his group chats and all his texting. It's just done on a computer instead of on a phone.
Okay. So it's
and that's kind of how we got around that. So he has a Google Voice number. So he teaches piano lessons, for instance. So he'll like, at first I was so worried, like he doesn't have a phone, but it works. Like he gives the new family, here's my number. They don't know. It's a Google Voice number. They text him, here's when my kid's coming. He texts them back. Like it totally works. So it's, and actually with him, the 17-year-old, we've told him and talked about like, do you want to get a phone? Like you're a senior now. We're okay with that. And he's like, no, he's like, I'm good. This is all working. And he also doesn't want to pay for it because we've always believed that when the children start having a phone, they've got to have some skin in the game. They have to start paying for it, some part of it, or else, or else they don't understand that this isn't free. Like, this does cost money.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter who has a phone, she pays every month half.
Good for her and good for you.
This is so
mind-boggling, right?
Yeah, it is mind-boggling.
And I will tell you, my daughter, who's a sophomore, she'll say like, Mom, I would like to have a phone. Like, I think life would be a lot easier, but she never gives me grief about it. She doesn't hate me. Like, she knows, they know we're for them. And I think it's so important that if your kids know you're for them, like you want to take them to activities that they love. You want to nurture them. If they're interested in art, like you take them to art. My daughter loves horses like you do, and so we take her to lessons. They know you're for them. You're not trying to be a killjoy in their life, but you're trying to protect them from things that you believe are life stealing, that are joy stealing. Like we think this is a huge waste of time. You're going to have your whole adult life to be glued to your phone. So enjoy your childhood. That's kind of the vibe. And it's worked out really well. And I think, my kids are just as prone like any other kid. They use my Instagram account to follow all the people they like. So it's kind of funny. So the hit for me is all my daughter's interests just fill my Instagram feed, right? So I just never see anything I'm interested in, quote unquote, because it's all their interests. But guess what? This lets me know who they are. And it also shows me how their, inclination. I don't know. I think it's really
But,
good. And I don't mind making that sacrifice so that they don't have their own device.
I mean, and that could actually be good for you. Like you're probably less prone to buying shoes and lip gloss from Instagram than I
Exactly. This is also,
am.
it's like all this tennis stuff, it's like perfect. This is not tempting to me at all. You're so right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I just had a question in my mind for you, but I think it's, oh yeah. So what is the way that you talk to your kids about this?
Mhm.
How do
Yeah.
you explain to them? Because I think that many of us may be very educated as to what's happening, the addictiveness of social media. We
Yeah.
know about like the study that Facebook had on its own, about
Right.
how Instagram made girls feel bad about their bodies, right?
Yeah.
We may know about all of this, but how do you communicate that
Yeah.
in a way that makes sense to your kids?
I have to say, so if you're listening to this and you have younger children, like lean in because this was never a hard conversation for us
Mhm.
ever with two girls and a boy because as they're growing up, like they're kind of living the other way. Like they're living the way where you are doing stuff instead of watching people do stuff. Right.
Mhm.
So they like that. So I remember in sixth grade, my son Ethan went to school, right? Large public school, over 1,000 kids. And he said, Mom, we came back from summer break and all my friends were like, you don't play video games. That's so awful. What did you do all summer? And I'm wondering, like, and they're really like, laid into him. And I'm wondering, how did he answer this? And he said, Mom, I said to them, you don't know how to play the piano. You don't know how to play taekwondo. You don't even know who Winston Churchill is. I guess he was talking to them because he was really in a World War II then. And so once they taste like there are other things to do in life, they like it. If you're aligning them with the way they're created, the way that God has shaped them, you're aligning them with that, they come to life. And so they notice things like my daughter Lucy, who's now in seventh grade, she'd be in sixth grade and be like, Mom, the boys in my class, they can't stop thinking about video games. Like even when they're in school, all they talk about is video games and they're thinking about it all the time, Mom, and they can't learn. Like she's seeing this. And so if your children are they see it themselves and you give them the freedom to see it themselves, like talking to them about, well, what do you think about that? What do you think about that boy that came over to play at our house and he sat on the iPad the whole time? What do you think about that? So you are engaging them, and as they are older, you are asking questions. But it's kind of amazing that if you will raise your kids during those elementary school years with really strong relationships in the home, strong examples of what friendship really looks like, they understand that social media is counterfeit. They understand that video games, yeah, they're super fun, but they're really not productive. Like they get that. They understand that.
It's interesting. I feel like I'm so with you on one sense of it, but on the other sense, like
Yes.
I see there's like my husband makes electronic music and is
Right.
very he does all his like creativity is
Yeah.
via computer, right?
And
And
see, I'm still thinking vegetable because he's
yeah, and it
creating
is a
music.
vegetable, but
Yeah.
there's also like there are some video games that are really very beautiful pieces of artwork. And
Of
in fact,
course.
I also think like Minecraft is like very creative, right?
Yeah.
They like make all
Yes.
this stuff in there. And it's a different medium to do that. But
Yep.
on the other hand, I don't want it to I want their life to be about, to be filled with like things like going on hikes together and
Yeah.
like my one daughter doing the riding and the other daughter doing her scouts and all these different things. Like I want those,
Right.
I don't want it to pull away from those things too, right? And I think that I they think I'm a little bit of a like they think I'm a little like overly
Right.
freaked out about
If
screen
you
time,
just have to tell them about me, be like, you should
Yeah.
hear the mom I talked to today. They'll think you're a saint. They'll love you. But
Yeah.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. And so what I am saying, I'm not, you, this is an option, is what I
Mhm,
mean.
mhm,
And
mhm.
a lot of times we look back and we think, oh, I regret that I let them play that game, or I regret that I gave that phone because it resulted in so many problems. It doesn't have to result in problems, but many times it does.
Yeah.
But for the person who says, I'm not giving social media, I'm not going to do the video games at home, I'm not going to do the phone, believe me, you will never look back. Never. and say, wow, I really regret that. I mean, you will
I
only be
really
really,
wish I'd
I
given
really
them that
wish I
phone.
would have given my daughter a phone at 13.
No.
I really wish she would
Yeah,
have been on TikTok for her entire senior year. I really, really wish that. Like, it's, you just don't wish it. And so you do have to
that's
kind of
true.
choose which path you want. And there could be a moderate path like you're talking about, where you
Mhm.
are enjoying all these things of life, but they are playing Minecraft, they are doing this. But I know for a lot of families that once you get started, it's hard. Like, it's hard to get them to put those limits, just because it is so well crafted to keep their attention. And but again, like we talked about, every kid is different too, that some kids might be able to do it and it's not a big thing, it's just one part of their life, it's not a big thing, and that there are other kids that it will be more problematic. So again, check your child, watch your child, see what their tendencies are.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Um, all right. So just to recap, 0 to 2. Let's try to
Yes.
like no screen time,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
2 to 5, let's say that you're watching that half an hour. And of course, it'd be lovely to co-view, but we know you're probably not co-viewing. And then in elementary school, just decide. If you've got kids in that age bracket, just decide, they're not going to get a phone. They're not going to get social media. You may feel like you're the only one, but let's just think about this. They're in fourth grade. They're in fifth grade. They're in sixth grade. They don't need to be glued to their phone. They need to be playing. Just
yeah,
make the decision. And I
yeah.
love what Bill Gates did. He didn't give his kids smartphones till 14. So I love to say, like,
Mm,
if Bill Gates, who knew something about technology, waited
mhm.
until high school, there is something there.
Yeah, and it's funny too because the whole safety issue I think is so weird. Not
Yeah.
weird. I mean, it's like whatever.
Yes.
People. We live in a very fearful culture, so there's a lot of
Right.
fears that
Yes.
arise for people. But the whole idea of being able to reach your kid anytime, I think, is so interesting because everybody has a phone now. Like there are phones everywhere. Like
Right.
your
So
kid
true.
can just tap on anyone's shoulder and be like, "Can I borrow your phone to call my
Yep.
mom?" I had to teach my daughter when she started volunteering at the barn to use the phone in the office to call me.
Right.
She's like, "I should have a phone because I'm going to be on my own and I might need to go." I'm like,
Right.
"Just use the phone in the
Just
office." She's like,
walk
"Where is
10
it?
feet.
How do
Right.
I press the buttons?" I mean, it was crazy. I
I
was like,
love
"Oh my
that.
gosh." But now she's totally fine with
I
it.
totally love that
It's
so
so
much.
interesting,
Yeah.
like there are phones everywhere, right? Like, so it's
That's what
very
we've
easy.
always felt. All that any of our children ever had to do was go, hey, could I use your phone to their friend? And boom, we're done. Like, we used to have to find a phone booth. Our kids have it so easy.
Yeah. I was stuck once as a teenager in a situation in Providence, Rhode Island at night. And I had to like, I wanted to make a phone call and I had to ask somebody for the quarter. And someone thought they thought I was homeless. And I was like, no,
Right.
I have a $5 bill. I just need to
Yes.
use the phone. It's just like,
Oh,
it was a whole other world then.
yes.
Um, okay, cool. So, and then when they're in high school, elementary school and high school, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think of like if we could provide a bracket of like half an hour, but 2 to 5 or 2 or 3 to 5, and
Yeah.
then 5 to middle school. Maybe we're looking at what, like an hour a day or something
Yeah.
like that.
I like to say that 2 hours or less of that digital candy for many people, and this, junior high and high school,
Okay.
you'd be doing pretty. I think it's weird because comparatively speaking, you'd be really doing well because most kids statistically are getting 7 hours a day of digital candy. So if you're down to 2 hours, you're kind of like, sweet, I'm doing good. But I know, you think about it, the hours that they have after school and different things, 2 hours is still a big chunk of time. So for
Yeah.
you're listening, it still might be 1 hour or less of the digital candy or half an hour less, whatever. So
Yeah.
you think about this for your family. And I think we get sometimes stuck in comparing and we'll think, well, at least I'm not as bad as that, or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
for your own family, what ideally would you like each day? How much time would you like? And I had a friend, Dana Gresh, and she brought her teenagers and just said, hey, let's write down your priorities right now.
Mm,
What are the things you want to give your time to? So they'd write down, like, whether it's music or sports or church or volunteering, and they'd write it down. Okay, well, how does that look like in a week? And then they realized, like, where does social media and video games fall into this? And they
mm,
themselves decided, like, oh, I get it. Like, I should probably just spend a half an hour with this so I can do all these things, which I'm saying are important in my life. So help your children, have a family meeting where,
Mm.
or just meet with them one-on-one, where you say, hey, let's draw up your priority list this year. What would a great year look like for you? What do you want to get better at? What do you want to spend time doing? What would that
Mm.
look like each week? How many hours a week do we have to invest in that? Okay, let's do that, and let your child kind of discover that, oh, I can plan for this. And maybe those digital vegetables shouldn't be taking over 6 hours a day.
I like that. I love that idea of like plan for the priority list. That's really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
One final question, and it's a little bit of a challenging one. Say the listener has some limits. It's an hour, it's half an hour, whatever for your child, and you don't have a DVD player and you do have YouTube, which just loops around and
Yes.
whatever. How to hold those boundaries, how to
Yeah.
pull them away. What are any advice on that?
Yeah. So, we had an old fashioned timer, and we actually bought it on Amazon. It was a cube. I wish I had it with me to show me, but it basically was this timer, and it had 15, 30, 60 on the sides of it. And we just
Mm.
flip it. So, and that was like a visual reminder to your child that, okay, when this thing beeps, your time's over. And for young children, they really respond to that. They get it, like, oh, it's beeping, it's over. It's over. So if you have something external that makes a noise that they can use, that's hopefully not not your watch, so something that you can sit down and you can look at. But if it has to be your
Mm.
watch, that's fine. But for your child to see, and that
Yeah.
you're not too far away, so you kind of know what they're watching, and if they've kind of ventured off in a weird place, and really, you do have to be there at the end of that half hour, because what ends up happening, of course, is that half hour goes like so fast, and you're just starting whatever task you were doing, and then you just feel like, oh, let me just let them watch in their half hour, because whatever. But you really have to tell yourself, get over there and get them off. And I will say this with our young kids: if you give them books and art supplies and blocks and Legos, they will do that. So I think
Mm.
we sometimes have such a low expectation of what kids can do. Mitch Album, Tuesdays with Maury, he runs this orphanage in Haiti. And he says, because the kids don't have any technology, they act like kids. And all
Mhm.
day long, they could just like play with bubbles, like for the whole day. Like they are born with a sense of curiosity and wonder, and they can handle that. So I think for us as parents, don't be worried about leaving your kid like, oh, they don't have anything to do. That's good. Even when they're in junior high and beyond, that's good. Let them be creative.
Yeah, boredom is the birth of creativity.
Yes,
You just have to yeah, just something to do is right around the corner. It's okay to
yeah,
be bored. It's
it
okay.
is.
And it's okay for us to hold those boundaries and say, sorry, this is it. We have to turn it off. And uh, that's a whole challenge, right? But
Yeah.
yeah.
And you know what? If you are listening to me and you're like, I do not believe this lady, like, I think all her kids are on phones right now, So you can watch that Scream Kids film. It's
Hmm.
something free that you can watch or by donation. And that's at happyhomeuniversity.com. And it's something, I have a 15-minute version of it where my kids are just talking. It's something you can show to your sixth grader, seventh grader, teenager, and just say, hey, I just want you to watch this. And then be like, what do you think about that? And it's just something to talk about. So there are different ways to get this conversation going.
Yeah. Yeah. Arlene, this has been so helpful. I hope it's inspiring for people. I know that dear listener, you might have questions. Where can you can absolutely reach out to me
Yeah.
on Instagram at Mindful Mama Mentor. Ironically, I'm giving you an Instagram tag
Yes.
to start this conversation. But where can they reach out to you to continue this conversation?
Yes. So I have my Happy Home podcast, and also that website I just gave you, the happyhomeuniversity.com. We have a masterclass about Screen Kids. So if your interest is piqued and you're kind of wondering, but you just feel a bit lost and not
Mm,
knowing where to start, that's a great next step, the Screen Kids masterclass. And then the book is called Screen Kids, and that's co-authored with Dr. Gary Chapman.
awesome. Who is five love
Amazing.
languages?
Yes.
author. I would love to talk to him about that. So if you want to introduce
Yes.
us, you can.
Yes.
But anyway, this is amazing. I really enjoyed this, Arlene. You're bolstering my confidence to be
Yes,
the
go
boring weird mom.
Hunter. Yes, yes. And I hope wherever you are, listener, on this continuum, that you don't leave discouraged, that you don't leave like, oh my goodness, I'm so like in so much. No, that you're like, hey, you got a new idea today. Today's a great day for a fresh start. Maybe all it means is, hey, we're going to have a screen-free meal time. Or it's like, hey, this weekend, let's have a talk about our screen time. And really, if you start it with you asking your child, what do you think about mama's screen time?
Mm.
Now that teenager is more ready to have a conversation with you about theirs. So that's a way you can always start it.
So cool. What a great idea. Open it up with vulnerability. So smart. I love it, Arlene. Well, okay. So everyone check out the book, Screen Kids. And thank you so much, Arlene, for taking the time to talk with us today.
It
I'm
was
so
so
excited. I
much
want to
fun. It was so
check
much
out your
fun.
video of your kids and the phones. I think I'm gonna like show it to my kids.
Exactly.
Be
Show
like,
your
look,
kids.
they're not
Yes.
aliens. See, it's okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Janla Van Zant, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.